Welcome to Read Between the Lines, a book podcast. I am your host, Molly Southgate, and today I'm interviewing
Kris Calvin.
Hi there. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have you here. So can you tell me about your writing?
Well, I have my first thriller coming out actually this month. So my debut thriller. And it's really, I think of it as an adventure story for adults. It features a young woman, she's 32, who's a government investigator. And she's very into her work. She wants to be independent, to be able to take care of herself. So that's the most important thing to her. But her friend, Kate, is opening a preschool and says, please help me, please be an investor. And so she wants to prioritize that friendship. And she goes to help her, and shootings and kidnappings. It's a thriller. So all kinds of things happen and it becomes a very fast-paced story. So that's what I just finished. That's coming out now. And then I have another book that I'm working on. And I had one earlier book that I did with a hybrid, like a Kickstarter publisher. That's it. So I'm a pretty new author. I'm a big reader. I read about 2 books a week. But wow. I'm transitioning. It's a lot. I have my whole life. So I read about 100 times more books a year than I write. And I think that informs my writing. So whenever someone asks me about my writing, I instantly think, well, wait a minute, am I a writer? But I guess now officially with a New York publisher, I guess I'm a writer.
Oh, that's so cool. So can you tell me a little bit about like the importance of reading to improve your writing?
So when I was a kid, and I'm not at all unique in this, but I wasn't safe in my own home. It was a scary place to be. And so when I was little, this was back in the day when you could actually go unmonitored at 6 years old or so, go to the public library. It was walking distance from the house. So I started reading really because the library was a safe place and people there were kind to me. And so I associated books with being where nothing bad would happen to me. And I wanted to read all the books in the children's section. And I could only reach the books like starting with Z because I was little, so the bottom shelves. So I started backwards from Z and started reading. So that's really where it came from, is that reading for me was something more than just reading. It was a whole environment of the public library. And because I kept that up and reading my whole life, it's interesting. I took a master writing class from Lee Child, who writes the Jack Reacher thrillers, which are super big in the thriller community. Mm-hmm. And we had to fill out questionnaires about ourselves, which was nerve-wracking because there were only like 8 of us in the class. Oh. And what he chose to read from my questionnaire was the fact that I said, I read across all genres. And he said, this is the thing everyone should have to do. And I was like, wait, I got a right answer when I don't really know anything about writing. So for me, I think it informs it, even though I read everything, fantasy, sci-fi, anything, literature, especially for mysteries and thrillers. You're almost entering into a contract with the reader. They expect certain things from you. They expect enough clues to solve it, but not so many clues that it's easy. They don't expect to be tricked where you think it's another person. And in the chapter before last, they give you the murderer. Like there's sort of an agreement. So reading in my genre, mysteries and thrillers, helped me craft mine, I think.
That is really awesome. And yeah, I also write and I read a lot.
Excellent.
I mean, I've got this podcast and I definitely agree with you on the importance of reading across all genres and getting really just that cross-section. There's going to be some that you don't like, but it's still good to find ones that you do within that.
I agree.
Yeah. So with your book, none of the child characters are like really like harmed in it or anything. Can you tell me about like making sure that they were safe in that, and like how you can create a space for people to read without it potentially being very triggering?
So because of that early start that I had, part of what was so cool is most books, this has changed some, but most books, at least for little kids, the kids end up being safe. They can be super scary. Like I remember Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as just being like a terrifying, the kids get taken and all this. But, most of them, unless it's a folktale, a Hansel and Gretel type thing, horrible things can happen. But if they're really written for children, most children's books, the dragons come and the monsters come and even the mean parent comes and the kids are always okay. So I felt safe inside adventure books that were scary because I could trust that the kids would be okay. As an adult, that is completely not true. I would say 1 or 2 out of every thrillery book that I pick up, there's either a pedophile or a serial killer that harms children. It's a very common thing. And the only thing that I can understand is that maybe for people who had really safe childhoods, it's sort of like riding a roller coaster. Like they know the roller coaster is not going to go off the rails. So the fact that kids are being raped and beaten up and harmed and killed inside of a book, to them is kind of like, wow, this is horrible, weird stuff that could never happen to me. You know, like they don't have terror. I have terror. So I can't pick up books where that starts to happen to children and not say, I know what that feels like. So for me, I wanted adults, not just like me, but all adults, and even down, I think my books are certainly okay for high school, but maybe even for middle school. There's not explicit anything really. So I feel like it was important to me to have that same level of I'm worried for this kid. Oh no, I've gotten to really care about them. And yet, just like when I was a little kid, the adventure is going to be someone's going to take care of them. And that I want to write those books in all different ways with all different stories, but where people can go to sleep at night when they're on chapter 17. You know, I just don't want them to be like,
love that. Because that creates such a safe space too, you know? And like, you can still have suspense and still have thrillers without having it be so, I don't know what the word, I'm losing the word, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, just terrifying or graphic. So for example, in All That Fall, there's a creepy guy that you think has a wrong attitude towards this 3-year-old. So I'm not denying that there's weirdness and badness in the universe and in the world, but no one's getting near her. She's never left alone. There's no way there's moments where you go, oh my gosh, where is she and where is he? So, I want people to worry and be concerned because we have to for our, the children who live next door, or if we have children. So it's been an interesting journey for me because in the thriller genre, so many of my friends, authors who I respect and love, I open their book and I'm like, whoa, dude, what are you thinking? Dude, even if it's a woman, like, what are you thinking? I don't know how that comes out of these really kind, gentle people. And I guess the only thing I can think of is that for them, it's imaginary. Yeah. Or it's solving a problem, meaning they want you to see how bad it is up close so that you'll care about that. Maybe that's why they write that. But I just, I'm going to have fun with my books and I want people to have fun when they read them and yet be, tense, because it's a good feeling to be tense and feel better.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that it's also better for you to write it. Like it's more fun and less.
It absolutely.
Oh, I need to get these words. Oh my God, wait, what's going to happen?
I don't know how some very talented people, I don't know how they do that, but they do, and they do it really well. And there's clearly an enormous interest and market for it from people who I think are good people. But yeah, for me, these books are a way, because the other thing I don't like is when people say, well, if so many things are triggering, then you just have to read this really 18th century Victorian women dropping their hankies. It's just like, I'm not like a comic book reader either. I like fast action. So that was my challenge.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you like to read everything. Yeah. How did you hone in on writing in the thriller genre for this book?
So I don't outline at all. And in fact, the one time I tried to outline because the publisher wanted to know what book 2 was about. So they're like, you have to tell us so we can make the cover now. And I'm like, but the book isn't coming out for a year and I haven't written enough of it to be able to tell you. Like I have a premise, but I can't tell you enough. And they're just like, well, we have to do it because marketing and whatever. So I did outline, and then I tried to write from my outline and I had to literally throw away 30,000 words. Like none of it was any good. I was just
30,000?
Yeah, because I was trying to hit the beats, that you're supposed to have. And then the character changed in this one. It was just like, so for me, I'm a very visual person and I see in my head. So I'll just start with an idea. So actually the idea for this book was Luke, the teenager. It had nothing to do with a 3-year-old, nothing to do with Emma even. It was just, I have this teenager and what's going on with him and his mom. And I can see Luke and I can see his mom and things are happening. And I'm just trying to put it down while I see it. And so it wasn't necessarily true that it was going to be a thriller, except that I know I like adventure stories. So I wanted something to happen really fast that was gripping. Like I didn't plan a 48-hour novel at all. Just the scenes kept coming quickly after one another in 300 pages and you've only gone 2 days, you better be done. It's just like, that's it. So for me, it's just following, and it sounds like someone would make this up, but I know other authors have this. The characters really do direct me and I can make changes. So for example, a character died and I was crying. I was like, hold up, who wrote that scene? It's just like I wasn't. And so but I couldn't tinker with it. I had to take out that whole chapter. Like I can't, because the scene is a whole. Yes. So I don't know if I write strangely or if it's common maybe, but it's somewhere in between those two things.
Yeah, because I've talked to a lot of authors on this show, and they're always like, I actually tend to ask that question and say like, how do you work with your characters? Right. And so many of them say, and they always introduce it that way too. They're always like, I know this sounds weird, but they inform my story. They write my story. Yeah. And I think that's such a fascinating
it's a very
phenomenon that happens.
It is a weird phenomenon. But the thing is, I'm not one of the many, many authors who wanted to be a writer. Like it was the opposite. I wanted to be a reader and I wanted to be safe. And so I never kept a diary, a journal. I didn't write, even when I went to college and there was a required English class and it had a creative writing bent to it. I found a way to get out of it. Like I didn't want to write anything creative. So I'm an economist by training. I studied very analytical stuff. I worked for years in this advocacy way where I only wrote these kind of letters to the governor and very, very controlled, not creative. I'm the least creative person I know because I didn't like not having guardrails about where my head would go because of PTSD and other things related to my childhood. So I just wanted somebody else to be writing it and me to be just behaving myself. But I was reading so much that I had an idea for a mystery and I just couldn't shake it. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. So actually, no, now it was because it was when I wrote it. So it's probably about 7 years ago. I had never written anything, a short story, an essay, nothing. And I got up at 4 a.m. because I still had a kid at home and I just was going to write this just for me, just an idea. I couldn't shake it. There was an identity mix up. There was so in 3 months I wrote it and I thought it was amazing. Like I thought it was so clever. I was like, I wrote a whole book and it's pretty good. And so then I sent it to a developmental editor to just get an opinion because I wanted to share it. I thought it was good. She said it was terrible. Oh, terrible. And what she told me was, you can write. There's no question you can write because I've been writing all these letters. I could write really clearly. She said, but your characters only see things. Nobody smells or touches or hears. And it's not a mystery because you keep warning us if something bad is going to happen. Because of course I was still in I'm not going to scare anybody. So I took that first draft and I spent about a year reading books about how to write and going to conferences. Because one thing is I'll try to, again, to sort of be good. I wasn't being creative then. I was trying to fix the creative idea I had. And that book, which came out in 2016, again, with a Kickstarter thing, won some awards, like a best first novel nationally. And it was crazy because it went from this is terrible to work on it for a year. You got a bunch of awards. So then I thought, hey, well, it was actually really fun to write the terrible thing I wrote and make it a good thing. So I thought I'll try to make a good thing. So since I work full time, single mom, all this stuff, it's taken me until now. I had the new book I wrote. And then that one, I actually decided I'll just see if I can get it traditionally published. And then I did. So I don't even know what your question was anymore, but what I was trying to say.
I don't know either, but I love that answer. I think that was, I have no idea. That was a really great answer.
Thank you. I don't know where I was going with that. But I think the point being that I never planned to write. I don't have a plan about what else I'll write, except that now that I'm doing it, it is life-changing, life-saving. I so admire you that you are accessing that in yourself now, because the
Thanks.
only regret I have is that I wasn't brave enough when I had ideas to say, it doesn't really matter if I'm getting this right, what people are thinking. I enjoy this process, which I assume for you is true.
Oh yeah. And the important thing is that now you're going in, you know,
The
like
important thing is, yeah. But so this is my first traditionally published book, and I turned 65 this year.
Oh,
so that
is amazing.
When I say I want to keep writing, I'd love to write 10 Emma books. I love her character. She has lots of stories. Mm-hmm. My goal is a book a year, as long as I'm, everything willing here to write it. But I wish I had started with Emma, at any young age. But you're right. Very positive attitude. I'm here now. I'm doing it now. But I do encourage people, if fear is holding you back, whether it's from singing or gardening, you think you're going to kill the flowers, or traveling, you're afraid of, and acting, anything. If fear is holding you back, that's not a weakness. That doesn't mean that you're less strong than a person who's brave. So you have to accept and work within that, but find a place where you feel safe enough to just stretch, not to leap, not to challenge in a big way, like my first writing by myself, nobody looked, but, just to stretch, because I think we all miss so much. I mean, it's a very fear-based life for a lot of people who didn't necessarily have the problems that I had starting. It's kind of hard to be human, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the one thing I tell people is, try it. Try it. It cannot work, and then try something else.
And just yes, definitely. 100%. Yeah. I'm just thinking right now how much you would love my mom, because she actually, I'm going to plug her right now. She has a whole podcast called Broken to Brave.
Oh my goodness, really?
And it's all about her journey, about like healing through her trauma. And
wow.
And at 50, she was in bed for a year, and then getting up and
how fabulous
to bravery. And like, as you're saying all this, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's amazing. I probably would. I will have to listen to that, because that's what is such a challenging thing for all of us to do. And especially all of us who've had any kind of trauma, which I would say is probably most people, to varying from little teeny tiny degrees to very serious degrees. But I think for writing, because I didn't know it was what I wanted, I kept trying other things. Like I ran for a local political office and I was elected, and I thought, I'll help people. I'll be a politician who does good things. And it was okay, but didn't satisfy me the same way. Or I wanted to go to every baseball park in the country because I love baseball. And I thought, how cool would that be? Go to every single, that'll make me happy. It's like, I owned a little thrift shop that had secondhand clothes, because I love vintage clothes and furniture and all that stuff. So I thought, this will make me happy. So and I'm not saying that it's wrong to say this will make me happy, but I just thought I'll try different things. And then when I tried writing, that was like game over. There's nothing that feels like writing.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell people, don't give up. So you tried writing, you tried singing, you tried gardening, try it for 3 months and throw it out. And that's not a failure. That's not quitting. There's a million things to do in the world.
And well, that's life too. It's like, it's trying everything and then going, okay, this one sticks. This one sticks.
So I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you a question, but how did you start with podcasts? Speaking of trying everything, that's interesting to me, because you're an actor, right?
Yes, I am.
So here you are acting, and some people could say to you, well, just spend all your time acting. But you're like, no, I'm going to read a whole bunch of books and talk to authors. Like, how did that happen?
Well, I was actually kind of doing this first. Because my parents started the company when I was 6. And so then I want to do a show. And they're like, what? I was like, I want to do one. And I was little 6-year-old me was going, I want to do this show about this. I'm going to do a podcast about this TV show that we've never watched. That's already 3 seasons in. And we have to be caught up by fall. And they're like, who did
wow. Exactly. What happened, dear?
And then this started how many years ago now? Only like 2, because there was a big hiatus in there. But yeah. I've had a variety of shows. Yeah,
which is exactly what we're talking about, which is if something seems fun, and obviously you have supportive parents who said, okay, she's 6, that sounds kind of weird, but let's try it, right? And then you enjoyed it, and so you're doing it now. So yeah, I think it's, I think again, I look at people who say, I always knew I wanted to be a writer. And to be honest, of the successful authors I know, that's about 98% of them. They seem to have always known. And I like to try to encourage the people who aren't sure, who don't know. Because for me, it's really been an astonishing, this experience right now, where I'm getting to have fun talking to you, or, just all the things around trying to bring all that fall out to where people will try to read it. Because being an unknown author, especially in the pandemic, I think it's kind of like comfort foods. People are going to authors they know. So people are buying books, but they're going to New York Times bestsellers or authors they know. So for someone like me, where people aren't browsing in bookstores and they can't even go to the library generally, it's starting baby steps to open, but not in time for my book. The question is, how do you kind of get people to at least go, I'll try something new. So that's kind of the curiosity for me, never having done this before, is what will happen.
Yeah, I think it really, I've already said this, but I really think it's so cool that you found your thing and that now you're doing this. And once again, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so happy to have you on here.
Of course, it's a pleasure to speak to you. And I hope I do I'll listen to your mom's stuff. And I hope I get to talk to her someday. She sounds very cool.
She very much is. I think you guys would really like each other.
Thank you.
So I have another question, and that is, how has working in child advocacy influenced your writing?
So my title was Chief Executive Officer of the American Academy of Pediatrics in California, and I did it for 30 years. So I spent an awful long time working with pediatricians, not only on issues like access to healthcare or vaccines, but we worked on all kinds of what are called social determinants of health, poverty and food insecurity and discrimination, and just a lot of issues. And so when it came time to write, I had not only my own desire to tell stories where children end up safe, but I had this real belief that while government gets a lot of things wrong, there are a lot of people in government who work very hard to do good things for kids. And so even though I'm writing in a political setting, so my books take place in Sacramento, the capital of California, I don't have Democrats and Republicans at each other's throat and fighting. We can just read the news. So I try to look at the way that I see people working together on good things. And while that's not a theme in All That Fall, it's in the background where you have policy people as not, all good or all evil. And so I think that my experience in policy and politics definitely informed my desire to have a societal backdrop that does some good things.
Yeah.
I've never been asked that question. So I'm like, is any of my answer making sense? But let's hope.
Oh, no, it does. That was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually just have one final question for you today. And that is, what do you have coming up?
So Emma Lawson is the lead in this ensemble piece, All That Fall. So I have a new book that doesn't have a title yet, although I'm sure they'll tell me what it is soon. So this is a series. So this is the second Emma book, except she starts out as the main character sort of from day one. And I love to read series, from all the way from Harry Potter to whatever. I like to read a lot of books. And so again, this will be second Emma, but I hope there'll be 10. So that's what's coming up, except for my book that's out now that I have to say is the most exciting thing.
That is so awesome. Well, once again, this has been really so great talking to you.
Thank you. It's very nice talking to you too.
For Read Between the Lines, my name is Molly Southgate.
I'm Kris Calvin.
Let's end this the way all great stories end. Happily ever after? The end.
Thank you for listening to Read Between the Lines, a book podcast. This episode is hosted by Molly Southgate. It is edited by Rob Southgate and produced by Southgate Media Group. You can get in touch with the show at readbetweenthelines@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail at 708-887-9473. That was 708-887-9473. You can also find us on Instagram at Read Between the Lines Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.